This video is kindly sponsored by Masterworks. Most atheists are pretty bitter, angry, and humourless souls. They will probably not like Anthony DeStefano's stinging and entirely hilarious takedown of the smug and arrogant brand of pseudo-intellectualism that modern atheism has become. Well, Anthony's book is certainly hilarious. I'll give Mike Huckabee that. As his targets whine, DeStefano will shine, and his revealing book will enlighten, entertain, and probably melt some snowflakes. Yep, it's entertaining alright, and while it won't melt snowflakes, it will melt minds. Oh look, here's another good one. Inside the Atheist Mind is a powerful retort to today's aggressive proponents of atheism, revealing how illogical and intellectually bankrupt their arguments truly are. Which is especially amazing, I must say, considering that Anthony doesn't actually address atheist arguments at all. As he makes clear on the very first page, my purpose is not to convince you to believe in God or to prove God's existence in any way. No, this book is not for you. It's about you. It's about all those wonderfully deceptive, malicious, ignorant, cowardly, and hateful things you say and do on a regular basis. So if Rick Santorum had actually read the first page before endorsing the book, he might have worded things a little different. Nor would he have claimed that Anthony uses irony, sarcasm, and above all, an abundance of well-researched facts to debunk the philosophy of modern atheists, which is so often hollow and hypocritical. Unfortunately for Rick, Anthony has the sarcasm and wit of a piece of toast, and his book is philosophically barren, with even the chapter titles making this pretty damn clear. Anthony's purpose is to accuse atheists of being arrogant, ignorant, ruthless, intolerant, shallow, cowardice, death-centered, faithful, malevolent, and ending. But hey, pointing out mistakes apparently makes one a bully. Okay, just one more endorsement, shall we? Some children behave so very, very badly that reasoning with them is to cast one's pearls before swine. Anthony DeStefano understands this, and happily spares not the rod in giving these wayward little beasties, known as the New Atheists, the sound and proper hiding they so richly deserve. I brazenly defy anyone who thinks his atheism reasonable to read this wise and witty book. Alright, go on then. Let's hear Anthony give us atheists a sound and proper hiding with facts and logic. Well, I should say, let's continue.
Atheism really is a kind of a faith. It's not just ignorance. It's a faith with a whole system of beliefs, really, a system with its own philosophy, materialism, its own culture, secularism, its own politics, social Darwinism, its own morality, relativism. It's even got its own sacraments, abortion and euthanasia. So it's a whole. Once you understand that it's a faith system, then their arrogance and the evangelistic quality of their writings.
And there are so many versions of this.
A while back, I commented on an interview conducted by Michael Knowles, an employee of Ben Shapiro's The Daily Wire, as he interviewed Anthony to promote the latter's book, Inside the Atheist Mind, Unmasking the Religion of Those Who Say There's No God. And unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, I only managed to make it a quarter of the way through the interview before having to stop for everyone's sanity. However, I'm feeling fresh and I'm ready to continue my commentary. Needless to say, if you haven't seen my previous comments and you'd like to, then you can find it linked below. But in any case, you won't need to watch that before enjoying now. I'm telling you, the cringe Olympics that you're about to witness is seriously impressive. As some of you have noticed, this channel has recently received a boost in production. We've got a beaut of a microphone, plenty of acoustic paneling, and some fresh aesthetics, but behind the scenes is where the really hefty investment has been happening. Slowly but surely, I found ways of outsourcing what I can, so that I can focus on serving you, my fellow apes, with as much solid content as possible. All of this requires money, of course, and so having a company that deals in investments invest in me in the form of a sponsorship is not only meta, but it's greatly appreciated. In an ideal scenario, we would all have our money working for us, as that way we'd be free to focus on self-actualizing pursuits. But in 2022, that's easier said than done. Most ways of passively growing your money, such as investing in the stock market, have been suffering this year. In fact, the Bank of America, which reports the average portfolio of stocks and bonds that millions rely on, is down 34% this year alone. That's the worst performance in a century. But here's where Masterworks presents a fascinating opportunity. Masterworks is a unique platform that lets you invest in multi-million-dollar art by legends like Picasso and Banksy, but for a fraction of the full price. All Masterworks' offering circulars with the SEC are linked in the description, and at sec.gov. This isn't NFTs or crypto. According to Citibank, art has a very low correlation to other investments like stocks, so when they dip, your art investments may not. In fact, even with all the economic chaos of 2022, Morgan Stanley says the average piece is selling for 26% more at auction compared to this time last year. What Masterworks is doing is pretty damn fascinating, and of course it's in their best interest to get the highest possible return from selling their art. And talking of sales, since I spoke about Masterworks in October, they've sold 2 more paintings. One right after my video for a 17.8% net return, and one just a few weeks ago for a 13.9% return. So, if you're looking to diversify your portfolio, then be sure to click the link below.
Let the 75th
Cringe Games
begin. May the odds be ever in your favor.
Everybody's got to serve somebody. And so the environmentalists have the original sin of pollution, and they have the sacrament of they sell indulgences in the form of those carbon tax credits, don't they? There, in certain versions of intersectionality, there's the original sin of privilege. There's actually the Gnostic metaphysics of transgenderism. I appear to be a man, but the flesh is evil, and really metaphysically I'm a woman. You see all of these sorts of things crop up all of the time. Atheists, they pull away when you say that their religion is a faith. How can we convince them of this point?
Alright, so after Anthony gave us his Olympic-level Gish Gallop, which again I've addressed elsewhere, Michael has joined the race. And so let's take each claim at a time.
Everybody's got to serve somebody. And so the environmentalists have the original sin of pollution, and they have the sacrament of they sell indulgences in the form of those carbon tax credits, don't they?
Continuing with Anthony's rhetoric, Michael colours his opposition with religious symbolism. So rather than environmentalists being concerned about, say, the effects of population growth on global temperature, Michael spins this into the original sin of pollution. And rather than the environmentalists proposing solutions, such as creating financial incentives to reduce carbon emissions, Michael describes these solutions as sacraments. On this, I have 2 things to say. First, religious language can be applied to just about any topic. What's that? You favour democracy? Yeah, well, that's the original sin of civilization, and the indulgement, the sacrament of casting a vote. Secondly, and more importantly, it's worth asking why theists like Anthony and Michael analogize in this way. And simply put, it's to equate. Various religious outlets, such as the Daily Wire, aim to equate their faith-based worldview with the fact-based worldview of science by appealing to analogy, decorating such things as environmentalism, transgenderism, social justice, and identity politics in religious language. Basically, any view that they don't like, they drape it in a divine garb. The issue, however, is that outside of tribalistic tendencies, which all humans suffer from, all groups suffer from, these analogies are more often than not false. The reason that, say, non-religious people object to the Catholic sacrament of the Eucharist is not because of the proposition itself, that is, the claim that the wafer literally turns into the body of Christ. Rather, we object due to the lack of evidence for the proposition. The crucial concern is not the metaphorical language, but rather the facts of the matter, and so an analogy is going to have to be similar in this most important part of comparison. But this isn't the case, say, with the sacrament of carbon tax credits, is it? Unlike the wafer, which doesn't literally turn into Jesus' body, Taxing carbon does, literally, reduce global emissions of atmospheric carbon dioxide.
There, in certain versions of intersectionality, there's the original sin of privilege. There's actually the Gnostic metaphysics of transgenderism. I appear to be a man, but the flesh is evil, and really metaphysically I'm a woman.
Here we're again witnessing religious language being draped onto whatever Michael doesn't like, and we can again do the same with anything. You see, with laissez-faire capitalism, there's the original sin of some people not wanting to be a serf. Or better yet, take Michael's clean clothes, trimmed hair, white teeth and glasses. What you're looking at here is the doctrine of aesthetics, the metaphysics of cleanliness. I appear to be a naked, stinking mess with rotten teeth, but the flesh is evil, and really I'm a clean, well-dressed person whose shit doesn't stink. What's wrong, Michael? Why don't you accept God's gift of your eyes not working properly? You're made in God's image, are you not? The flesh is just so damn evil. Now, are these analogies from Michael cringy? Oh, most certainly. But they're also, at least to the Daily Wire fanbase, very effective in terms of rhetoric, and so they're not going anywhere. At the end of the day, we have to bear in mind that if a religious person hasn't deconstructed their religious epistemology, and the vast majority of them haven't, they're not going to recognise why these analogies are fallacious. In a nutshell, while it's true that we all believe in some basic things without sufficient evidence, such as that the external world exists, we do this because these basic beliefs provide substantial explanatory value for close to zero ontological commitment. Religions, however, presuppose their entire worldview, from unembodied minds to creation from nothing to eternal life. And in the case of Anthony and Michael here, they additionally presuppose impregnating angels, resurrections, and the almighty nonsense that is the Trinity. And this all comes with an insanely massive ontological commitment that's based chiefly on emotional and egotistical desire, and only then, if at all, explanatory value. This is why theists are not expected to be well informed on all things philosophy and science. Before moving on, I think it's worth asking why religious outlets draw these analogies. What does it achieve? It comes back to the faith-based religious view versus the fact-based scientific view. Rather than having to deal with the criticisms that are levied at religious worldviews, and specifically their lack of evidence and reliance on faith, if theists can convince themselves and their flock that, say, environmentalism is just as faith-based as Christianity, then they can effectively ignore difficult objections to faith. Essentially, they can label and dismiss. They can say, yeah, my religion has issues, but they affect your religion just as much. There's more to be said on this matter, of course, but I'm going to dedicate a whole video to it in the future. Anyhow, with Michael's Gish Galloping dealt with, it's back to Anthony to shine and whine.
You see all of these sorts of things crop up all of the time. Atheists, they pull away when you say that their religion is a faith. How can we convince them of this point?
Well, a faith is just believing something that you can't mathematically prove. That's all faith is. And atheists take so many things on faith. They believe that everything came from nothing. Well, you can't prove that scientifically. They believe that this amazing universe of ours of incomparable beauty, harmony, and order came about by itself. That's faith. They're trapped into this whole materialist worldview where everything has to do with atoms and molecules. You know, all our hopes and dreams and desires, all our art and culture and history, all our deepest desire for everything that's good and beautiful and true. All that to them is just due to the random movement of molecules. That's not science. That's faith. What's more, that's an irrational faith. That's the basis for all superstition. So they have a faith. They must be called out on this point because this faith that they have has been responsible for more bloodshed and carnage than any system of beliefs the world has ever known.
And really in service of the faith.
Of all the finalists I've ever had on any of these shows, in a final, that was the greatest performance I have ever witnessed.
By Odin's beard, Anthony. Your Gish Gallop prowess is off the bloody charts. That was incredible. And consequently, it's going to take a while to pick apart. But that is, indeed, precisely what I'm going to do.
Atheists, they pull away when you say that their religion is a faith. How can we convince them of this point?
Well, a faith is just believing something that you can't mathematically prove. That's all faith is.
So there are a few definitions of faith that are frequently used, but none of them pertain to mathematical proof. Mathematical proof is analytic and axiomatic, dealing in absolutes. Anthony is suggesting here that all beliefs that are not faith-based are mathematically grounded, which is nonsense. I don't believe that Anthony's book is hilarious due to mathematics. I've read enough of it to make that judgment. I have empirical evidence. Likewise, I don't believe that my friend has a cat due to mathematics. The little prick scratched me. So Anthony is clearly off to a wonderful start here.
Faith and atheists take so many things on faith. They believe that everything came from nothing. Well, you can't prove that scientifically.
Which is it, Anthony? Mathematical proof, which is a priori, or scientific proof, which is a posteriori?
You can't prove that scientifically.
The former is axiomatic, whereas the latter is empirical. They're completely different categories. But hey, you just keep on conflating, buddy. You and I both know that your flock couldn't care less for accuracy. You're singing their song, and that's all that matters. It's a shame, though, because Rick Santorum insisted that you had done your research, and it's just so obvious at this point that you haven't. Now, if the universe did indeed begin, then our means of knowing this would be through evidence that constitutes a scientific theory. You know, evidence such as the redshifting of galaxies and the cosmic microwave background, each indicating that once upon a time our observable universe was condensed into a hot, dense state. This evidence does not, however, tell us that everything began to exist at the Big Bang, nor that the totality of everything was located in just one place. For all we know, our universe might be just one in an endless sea of universes. We might be in the same position our ancestors were in when they believed that there was only one planet, and then only one solar system, and then only one galaxy. Or, put another way, when Anthony claims that atheists
believe that everything came from nothing,
he's spewing absolute nonsense. As anyone who knows anything about atheism will tell you, atheism doesn't entail a specific cosmological model. It's unbelievable just how uninformed theists who write books about atheists are. This should be low-fruit material that the majority of theists and atheists alike can laugh at. But no, it's featured on a conservative platform that has over 1 million paying subscribers. It's truly pathetic that modern-day theism is still this fricking absurd. And ironically, it's theists, and more precisely followers of Abrahamic theism, that insist, on faith, that the universe began to exist out of nothing, per Genesis.
They believe that this amazing universe of ours, of incomparable beauty, harmony, and order, came about by itself. That's faith.
I wonder, what universe did Anthony compare our universe with? Because he can't say that our universe is more beautiful, harmonious, and ordered, unless he has another universe to compare it with, which he doesn't. And if Anthony had actually taken the time to even dip his toes into atheist arguments, he'd have immediately found objections to the notion that our universe is ordered, and especially ordered by an all-powerful, all-loving entity. Tell me, if you were omnipotent, meaning that you could do anything that's logically possible, and you were omnibenevolent, meaning that you'd never want to unnecessarily harm sentient creatures, at what point would you decide that, you know what, I'm going to create the universe, and I'm going to create it so that in 14 billion years' time, no less, no more, 13 or 15 wouldn't be good enough, I'll create creatures in my own image on planet Earth. But just to spice things up a bit, because remember you're all loving in this scenario, before humans turn up, you'll be sure to cause several mass extinctions that will inflict untold suffering on just countless sentient beings. Exactly. This wouldn't pass your mind because it's a contradiction. Or at least, it damn well seems like one. This is, more than less, the evidential problem of evil. And Anthony making out that atheists think that all the order we see is the result of randomness.
All that to them is just due to the random movement of molecules.
Reminds me of Ben Shapiro's atheist delusion, which I tackled a few days ago should you be interested. Put simply, atheism isn't tethered to a view that the universe, or indeed anything, is random. It's amazing that I have to still explain these. This is such shit.
They're trapped into this whole materialist worldview where everything has to do with atoms and molecules.
Atheism also isn't tethered to materialism. You'd think that this is needless to say, but Anthony and Michael make it needed to be said. Some atheists are materialists, while others are not. Some atheists reject materialism in favour of religious propositions, such as reincarnation. Others reject materialism for non-religious propositions, such as ghosts. Others reject materialism for philosophical reasons, such as subjective idealism. And some, of course, maintain materialism due to its explanatory scope and lack of ontological baggage. I mean, when we think of how many things we once thought to be unexplainable by materialism that are now explained by it, we ought at the very least to acknowledge this, and be wary of repeating the same ignorant mistake.
They're trapped into this whole materialist worldview where everything has to do with atoms and molecules. All our hopes and dreams and desires, all our art and culture and history, all our deepest desire for everything that's good and beautiful and true, all that to them is just due to the random movement of molecules. That's not science. That's faith. What's more, that's an irrational faith that's the basis for all superstition.
Being the absolute brainbox that he is, Anthony has conflated materialism with randomness. Yeah, according to him, atheists believe that all of our hopes and dreams and desires, that is, our brain states, and all our art, culture, and history, that is, our produce, and all our desire for good and beauty, that is, again, our brain states, is random. Completely and utterly random. That's a beast of a straw man right there. And if anyone couldn't notice this from a mile off, such as Michael, even with his flesh-hating glasses, then pity is all I can afford. And then from here, Anthony accused this view of not only being faith, but irrational faith, and further still, an irrational faith that serves as the basis of all superstition.
That's faith. What's more, that's an irrational faith that's the basis for all superstition.
Oh yeah, it's atheist materialists that believe in demonic possession, isn't it? Fuck's sake. Well, as Anthony has told us, as far as he's concerned, faith is believing something that can't be mathematically proven.
Faith is just believing something that you can't mathematically prove. That's all faith is.
But, of course, immediately after stating this, he defined faith as to pertain to science.
They believe that everything came from nothing. Well, you can't prove that scientifically.
And now he's claiming that some faiths are irrational, which implies that other faiths are somehow rational.
That's an irrational faith.
This is a complete mess, resembling spaghetti soup that a child hasn't even given a moment's thought to arrange into anything coherent. And you know what? The fact that the definition of faith is so incredibly loose here isn't a bug, it's a feature. A lot of apologists do this. The word faith has multiple definitions, such as having trust or confidence in something or someone, which we all have. You trust and have confidence, for instance, that every word that comes out of Anthony and Michael's mouth is going to be pathetically ill-informed. And hey presto, it is. Your tentative trust in that which has yielded consistent results has paid off once again. But the definition of faith that relates to religion is more akin to what Michael expresses.
I've always liked the definition that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen.
Indeed, this is how the Bible defines it. Faith is believing in things based on hope. It's explicitly an emotional desire. It's starting with your conclusion that you want to be true, and then maintaining belief despite mounting evidence to the contrary. It is, plainly put, intellectually bankrupt, and often proudly so. But by equating definitions of faith, or simply inventing new ones, apologists are able, at least in the eyes of their flock, to counter objections to the role that faith plays in religious belief. For example, rather than having to provide an answer to how we distinguish between the faith of Christians versus the faith of Hindus, who hold mutually exclusive views, apologists equivocate their intellectually bankrupt faith with the trust faith of the objector, and then argue that since all worldviews have faith, objections to faith can be safely ignored, since they affect every worldview. And better yet, at least for the apologist, not only will someone have to recognise the equivocation to see the issue here, but to effectively talk about faith, one will need to have a robust understanding of epistemology, and the ability to deconstruct the rhetoric of the apologist as to even have an attempt to get through to the apologist's flock, who, let's face it, typically are not actually interested in having their mind changed. And it's for this reason, at least by my lights, why mainstream theism is still so utterly pathetic. It's amazing that in this day and age, they still can't understand the very basics of atheism. And it's astonishing that platforms such as the Daily Wire get views for this kind of crap. But once you get your mindset into religious thinking, it's not a surprise that it's been this way, and it isn't going to change either. Anyhow, I think that's enough Gish Gallop Olympics for today. Sadly, I'm not even past the halfway mark in this interview. It's just incredible. It's just incredible. On that note, as always, thank you kindly for the view, and an extra special thank you to my wonderful patrons and YouTube members.